It was built in a cornfield, more than a mile beyond the city limits. Town folks said nobody would ever be able to get out that far. But when Overholser and his bride gave a reception to open the house, there was scarcely a carriage or a team of horses that got lost, scarcely a family that didn't show up for the party. It was the spring of 1904. The town was Oklahoma City, and the house was built on what is now Northwest 15th and Hudson. Some 2 blocks south, another magnificent house stood. It was owned by Charles Colcord, first sheriff of Oklahoma County and a pioneer oil man. The Colcord house was a copy of the family home in Kentucky and was built from plans drawn by Thomas Jefferson, who came from far and near to sketch its architectural beauty. Thousands of sightseers marveled at its 30 rooms and its solid walnut woodwork that gleamed like a mirror with 22 hand-rubbed coats of oil. They say that fresh flowers were always around and that it took a staff of 5 to 8 servants to maintain it. But the Colcord house is just a memory. Its red stone walls and its white columns and its leaded windows have been sacrificed to a thing that we call progress. And the former inhabitants of this building are now homeless. And gone with the Colcord house are many other historically and architecturally significant homes. The Overholser house still stands, a monument not only to its builder, but also to its present owner, who has lavished much time and love and money on it. This house and its owner are not alone. There are others in this district who are dedicated to maintaining and preserving these homes, and now a move is underway which will officially designate this an historical preservation section. And these houses have been, they will continue to be, preserved with pride.
Henry Overholser came to Oklahoma City in the run of '89. He was a man of middle age from Ashland, Wisconsin. He was also a man of vision who had converted a substantial portion of his modest fortune into 10 cars of lumber and brought them into the territory on the first train. While others were building tents, he was building substantial frame buildings. As the territory grew, Overholser continued his building, a hotel, an opera house, numerous other buildings. 12 years after the run, Henry Overholser bought this land to establish a new residential addition. In 1902, he employed an English architect to begin construction. No expense was spared. An artist lived in for months and hand-painted the canvas-hung walls and ceilings. The house was opened with a party in the spring of 1904. Mrs. Overholser descended the great winding staircase in a white gown styled with a court train to greet guests at the main entrance on what is now Hudson Street. Carriages pulled in under the porte-cochere at the 15th Street entrance. Today, Henry Overholser's son-in-law, David J. Perry, lives in and cares for this historic and beautiful home. Almost every detail of it remains just as it was in 1904. Most of the original furnishings are still in use. The brocade silk draperies and imported lace and linen curtains are the same ones ordered by Mrs. Overholser from sample books. The stained glass windows over the stair still catch the sun. crystal chandelier still sheds its glow over the gilt Louis XV furniture and golden walls in the music room. The 17th century disc music box still fills the house with music. Henry Overholser was indeed a builder. He was instrumental in establishing and maintaining the state fair. He was a founder of the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. He helped build the St. Louis and Oklahoma City Railroad, which later brought the Frisco to Oklahoma City. He helped organize a group which thwarted the first attempt to make Guthrie the permanent state capital. Many times he pledged his personal fortune to help Oklahoma City grow. His home stands as a monument to him and to the other pioneers who started our city toward greatness.
J. Perry loves his house, and he worries about what will happen to it and its beauty when he is gone. But other builders and their descendants have already gone, and some houses are going too, falling not to the wrecker's hammers, but to decay and rot and apathy and unconcern. Yet this area must be preserved for our future generations, and we need these ties with the past to help us chart the future. In 1964, when the Colcord house was demolished to make way for a more modern building, George Shirk, then the mayor, determined that something should be done to preserve this historic area. He appointed a committee to begin planning for it. Why do you think this area should be preserved?
Well, for many reasons. Of course, to my mind, one of the most important is this area. This is Oklahoma City's heritage. We should preserve this region as Oklahoma City's heritage in the same sense that we preserve Independence Hall as part of our national heritage. And how fortunate we are in Oklahoma City that the people who have owned these homes and who have lived in this area have recognized its importance and have done their part to preserve it down to today. Look in other parts of the city, like the C.G. Jones home over on the east side, that is no longer preserved because of economic factors that could not be stemmed. It could not be stopped, could not be diverted. Now we have time yet here in this area to preserve it and protect it.
What is being done to preserve it?
A number of cities have already realized the importance of preservation. For example, Williamsburg, Virginia, the French Quarter in New Orleans, those things look nice to the casual visitor, but they're very carefully preserved that way by municipal ordinance. Oklahoma City is in the midst of planning and reviewing a historical district ordinance, an ordinance to create this particular area of our city into a historical district, which would require then that the structures within the district continue to conform to the cultural and heritage pattern of the area.
Last year, the Oklahoma City Planning Department issued a book outlining the area proposed as an historic preservation district. It includes the 3 through 900 blocks on Northwest 14th and 15th, the 2, 3, and 400 blocks on 16th through 21st Streets, plus a small area between 13th and 16th along Classen Drive. In order to protect and preserve this area, the booklet proposes an ordinance with standards for maintaining the district and the creation of an historical district review board. This board would review all applications for new construction or exterior remodeling of existing structures to ensure that such actions would not ruin the character of the area. By such controls, it is believed that the beauty and character of this district can be preserved for future generations. These tree-lined streets remind us of a gentler era. The ornate and graceful detail of the houses recalls an age when men took time and personal pride in craftsmanship. We asked architect Alan Lauer about the style of the homes.
Well, the majority of them down here are a conglomerate, actually, of various styles. They'll be in a general style, maybe Italian Renaissance, English Renaissance, Victorian, or Spanish. There are a number of homes in this area that are of a generally Spanish style or Mediterranean. In the days that this was constructed, there were craftsmen that plied their trades. The brick masons took real interest in the way they were laying up the brick. There were sculptors involved, and it's the smaller details that really make these old homes great. Today, the average individual is just not able to afford to pay for the time that it would take to do some of these things that were done in these homes down here. The majority of it is hand done. Back when these homes were built, in many cases a mold would be made out of clay, and then a stonemason would work from this clay mold.
We asked Mr. Lauer why the area is significant.
Any city, if it's going to make any progress, has to have a measuring stick, so to speak. And you can't tell whether you're making progress unless you compare what's being done now with some yardstick as to what's been done in the past. I think architecturally down here we're dealing with the past, and we can measure what the city's accomplishing today by seeing how far we've gone from some of these existing structures down in this area.
Do you think this type of construction, this type of architecture will ever return?
Well, it's pretty doubtful because of the cost. There's so much labor involved, and in today's market, labor is one of the major cost items, and most people just couldn't afford to have this type of construction today.
From a standpoint of art, architectural art, do you consider an area of this nature worthy of being salvaged?
Oh, very definitely. It's a real part of our heritage, and good design, no matter what age it's done, or good replicas of good design, will always have a value and should be saved.
This Colcord Heights area abounds in homes with a history. In this home in July 1933, wealthy oilman Charles F. Urschel and his wife were playing bridge with neighbors when two husky hoodlums appeared and abducted Mr. Urschel. He was released after payment of a $200,000 ransom. Mr. Urschel's clear thinking during his captivity led to the capture and conviction of the kidnappers in the first trial under the newly enacted Lindbergh kidnap law. This house was built by early-day attorney Charles B. Ames in 1910. In the ballroom here were held the first rehearsals of a group later to become the Oklahoma City Symphony. John M. Noble was Secretary of the Interior when he paid a visit to Oklahoma City and was so impressed he moved here and helped found the first telephone company, which later became Southwestern Bell. Dr. A.C. Scott, an early-day president of Oklahoma A&M College, built this house. Dr. Scott also started the first newspaper in Oklahoma City. In 1913, this house was built by W.L. Clayton, a partner in the Anderson Clayton Company cotton brokers. From a $3,000 investment in 1904, it grew to a 1965 gross revenue of almost $500 million. In 1916, the two men moved the business to Houston, where Will Clayton soon became known as King Cotton. In 1944, Clayton became the first U.S. Undersecretary of State for Economic Affairs. He developed the idea for the Marshall Plan and served as its first administrator. In 1889, G.C. Winans homesteaded the area between 16th and 23rd Street from Santa Fe to Walker. In 1913, he built this house as a home. That same year, he sold the rest of the tract to the Enoch brothers for $1 million. This home was once owned by Governor Jack Walton. It figured prominently in his impeachment. The governor was charged with accepting a $30,000 no-interest loan on the house in return for political favors. While this charge was not sustained, others were, and the governor was removed from office. During that fateful summer of 1923, Walton kept personal guards, sometimes a squad of state militia about him, and many significant conferences took place in this beautiful home. One newspaper called it his command post during the struggle. It was built in 1918. There are 17 rooms, 3 bathrooms, 3 fireplaces, a winding staircase of distinctive design, a 4-car garage, 2-room servants' quarters, a 3-room tool house, a huge dog, and 5 children. The dog belongs to the children and the house belong to Mr. and Mrs. William Veezey. Bill and Jane Veezey are good examples of the type of present-day residents of the Colcord Heights area.
Jane, what prompted you to move into an old house like this in the first place?
These old homes offer a lot of room for a growing family. You're not walking all over each other. You have plenty of room to grow and spread out. And then there's a certain graciousness, I think, about these old places that you don't find in the newer homes. We like the area. We're close to the children's schools. They walk to school. In our instance, we're close to the church, and they walk to church. I've never been a person that liked carpools, and so all of this is very handy for us. Our business is downtown Oklahoma City, and this is very convenient for Mr. Veezey.
How much have you had to do to this house?
Oh, a great deal. We've had boilers that have blown up, so to speak, or I should say flooded out. We've had to put in a great deal of plumbing. We've worked in the kitchen. We've had to do certain termite work and certain foundation work. And a lot of the basic things we did first you couldn't see, and it's very frustrating because you'd like to be spending the money on lovely new things and new furniture. But you start at the ground and you work out.
Have you tried to restore it in its original form, or have you just tried to make it livable?
I can't really answer on the original form because I didn't see it earlier. But we tried to let it retain a lot of the old look about it, not just go in and change walls for wall's sake. We've taken down a lot of glass doors and because they're impractical with children. We even have upstairs a lot of the old plumbing fixtures, and we're having an awful time trying to keep them to where we can use them because you can't find parts. And we go down and scrounge in a lot of the old stores trying to find the little knobs to go on the shower, because if we take it out, then you have to strip out the whole business.
Don't you often long for a new and shiny kitchen, for example?
Oh, well, yes. You often long for a new and shiny home, to be truthful with you. But I think that there's something about these places that kind of get in your skin, and you really can't leave. A new kitchen, well, we've done a little bit of work to the kitchen, and you can always do work to the kitchens and put in your new conveniences. We've had an old sink that started at this edge of the Formica and went clear to this, so you can see it was a 7-foot-long sink. It took 4 men to carry it out, and then on legs. And so this is the section we built in to replace the old sink. That's the old, that's the counter there. We didn't take it off because I said I wanted a chopping block, and the man looked at me and said, well, you have one 4 foot long. This was Governor Walton's office back in here. And I assume that later it was made into more or less like servant quarters because they added the ironing board and plumbing out there. Now, we don't use it as that. I use it to sew in.
About a block away from the Veezeys are Fritz and Marcia Hunzicker. There are 4 children in this house, ranging from 7 to 2. More than anything else, the Hunzickers were looking for space for their growing family. This place offered 13 rooms on 3 floors.
There are a lot of things that we like about living in this area, but the reason we bought the house was that we liked the space, and we liked the way it looked on the outside, and we could see that there was a lot of possibility for, improving the thing.
Compared to a new house in a suburban area, what type of home could you have bought with the same amount of money that you put into this one?
I think, of course, depending on the area that you bought in, it would be either, I'd say, a 2 or 3 bedroom, 1-story house in a nice, residential neighborhood.
Now, after You made the initial investment in this house. How much does it cost to improve it?
I don't know exactly what it is, but we air conditioned it and put central air conditioning and heating in, and we had to tear down this fireplace to make it a wood burning type thing. And I would imagine over the 5 years or so that we've lived here that we've about doubled the original investment.
The Hunzickers have done a good deal of work on this house. The first and second floors show what can be done with determination and a little money. The whole family enjoys the spaciousness of the house, and the children particularly like the third floor, where no restoration has begun as yet. Here they have a large play area where they are not worried about spills on the floor nor marks on the walls. In one third-floor room, Mrs. Hunzicker showed us the condition of many of the rooms before redecorating was begun. Dr. and Mrs. Robert Shaver have also discovered some problems of moving into an old house. They and their 3 children have done little other than paint and paper this house.
In an old house, the walls are quite uneven. And there was originally a door here, and if I'd turn on that light, you could see it too. Oh. So when you choose wallpaper, you have to choose patterns, and that's why all my... See the door? Mm-hmm. That's why all my wallpaper has patterns, and where it doesn't, I'm sorry.
The Shavers like the neighborhood and the space. They think it's a fine place to raise a family. Dr. Shaver likes antiques and recently acquired an old icebox, a magnificent hall tree, and a coal stove which stands in a corner of the dining room, though Mrs. Shaver would rather have it on the porch. When they moved in, they found a chandelier stored in the attic. It now hangs in the master bedroom.
It was meant to hang the other direction, you know, with the light bulbs hanging down. So we took it to a lady whose hobby, I guess, is doing this, and she turned it around somewhere or another. We cleaned it, and I guess it's solid brass.
Around the corner from the Shavers, Mr. and Mrs. Clyde Riggs found the house in very bad condition.
Well, the electricity had been condemned, and the living room ceiling was in the floor. It was livable, but not comfortably so.
Why would you buy a house with the living room ceiling in the floor?
Well, I had always wanted to remodel an old house because I love old houses and antiques. And I love this neighborhood particularly because of the larger lots and the houses and the trees. We didn't have much money to spend, and we had to find one that was in such bad shape that we could afford it.
And this was it?
This was it.
Well, what was the first thing you did when you moved in here?
Repaired the ceilings, fixed the ceilings.
What seemed to be the problem with the ceilings? You said the living room ceiling was on the floor.
Well, I assume the age, just the age of the house. Oh, and the floor in the bedrooms upstairs sagged into the living room 1.5 inches. And I'm sure that's why that ceiling had fallen. The others, just age, I'm sure.
What do you do about a floor that sags 1.5 inches?
You worry a lot. Well, my father and husband jacked the ceiling up and then added 2 steel beams to hold it in place and then masked it with wooden beams.
Originally, the house had a porch with brick columns. It had to be torn down, so Mrs. Riggs put the old bricks on a wall in the kitchen. The house was remodeled in 1927 by a previous owner, and many items were changed.
Did you ever long for that new feeling?
I have nightmares that I might have to move back in that new house.
Really?
Yes.
You like it here that much?
I love this house very much.
Well, I was going to ask if you'd do it all over again, if you had it to do over again, but obviously you would.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking every day for a 3-story house to start on.
You want to start again?
Yes, yes.
Your house is for sale?
No, my house isn't for sale, but if I could find a 3-story in this neighborhood, maybe not quite in that bad a shape, but I would like to start again.
Do you think it takes a particular type or a particular attitude to want to renovate a home?
Yes, yes. An individual could not be a perfectionist and live in an older home because they're just not airtight. They're never going to be 100% clean. They're just extremely livable. I think you have to have a lot of patience because these things they don't look like this overnight. They don't look like a new home that you can move into and it's all there. This doesn't happen in an old home like this. You don't move into one of these old homes with the idea of in a couple of years having it look like you want it to look. We have a 9-year plan, and right now we're in about the 8th year of the 9-year plan. And it takes a long time.
Do you think, in general, the overall area is really worth salvaging?
Oh, yes, I really do. I think there's a charm in this area that you won't find anyplace else in Oklahoma City. The history of Oklahoma City really started right here in this area. It was the first large, nice family home dwelling area. And I think we're unique in this city because in a lot of your cities, this area is already gone. It has been turned over to your boarding type houses or turned into office buildings and already infringed upon so that there isn't anything to save. Well, this is not so here. We have a lovely, lovely group of homes, and most of the people in them are very proud of their homes and feel a lot like we do. Yes, it's worth saving, and yes, we'll get out and scrap to do it, because we really don't want to leave this area. Well, it's a part of history of Oklahoma City, because so many of Oklahoma City's leaders have lived in this area. It's a beautiful spot. How many places in Oklahoma City can you find these large houses in one area with so many trees?
If we want to have a tie with history in Oklahoma City, then we're going to have to start someplace, and this is a good place to start, I think, because many of these houses have been well kept up over the years, and it doesn't present such a terrible problem as it might if they completely gone to decay.
Henry Overholser said he spent far more money on this house than he would have just for his own pleasure and comfort. He built it, he said, in the hope that it would be an inspiration for others to follow his example and make Oklahoma City a city of beautiful homes. In the more than 60 years which have passed, his home has been maintained as a thing of beauty, and others have followed his example and built other beautiful homes. Many are well maintained and preserved, but the beauty and the history of this area cannot be maintained without protection from commercial encroachment, from the wreckers' hammers, and from the blight of decay. The young families who have moved in here are trying, but it is up to all of us to assist them in assuring that this area will continue to be preserved with pride.